Hi everyone, today I'd like to take a look at a couple of the most popular keychain multi-tools that are available online. First up we have the NexTool Mini Flagship, we have the Leatherman Squirt PS4, their Gerber Dime, and the two different versions of the Victorinox Minichamp. This is the Cellador version and this is the Alox version. Now, the first tool that I would like to take a look at is going to be the NexTool Mini Flagship. And this comes in a variety of colors. I got this guy off Amazon. And there's ones where you can get like these little scales removed, and it's just much more of the polished stainless steel look. The big selling point to this guy is that it has two large tools, one of which is going to be the pair of scissors. Now I will say out of the box, this one that I got was actually defective. The scissors would kind of like stick way more than they're sticking now, and they wouldn't cut anything. So I actually used a little torque screwdriver here to loosen it up, and it did improve the performance. But I mean, 2 times out of 10, it's still kind of like bending paper than cutting paper. So I mean, I've seen some other videos where their version is just cutting through paper, no issues at all. Now the other big tool on here is also the pair of pliers. They're pretty decent from what I've seen. Both the scissors and the pair of pliers like use a decent enough of material. Now, I'm gonna be honest, like with all of these here, or all these tools here, like I'm not like wrenching on stuff all the time. In fact, most of the stuff just kind of dangles from my car keys until I need to use them. So I mean, having like a bigger pair of scissors and a decent set of pliers is pretty awesome. The only thing is that out of all of these, this is the only one that I'm gonna have to return for being defective, which is unfortunate because I mean, the rest of the tools are pretty awesome. I mean, you get a can opener and also or a bottle opener and can opener, and it's also a box opener too. So I mean, that's a pretty decent sized tool along with a decent size to it as well. And that's what, the other thing really that I like about this is that as far as like weight goes, which I mean might not be everybody's cup of tea, it weighs the most just because it has the most raw material to it, you know? Also, I kind of like the more like industrial design if you want to get it. The blade, I would say, is kind of terrible. You know, there's a lot of material to deal with here. So if you're great at like making a fine edge, go for it. But out of the box, that thing is pretty lousy. Next up, we have the what is this? The Phillips head, the 2D Phillips head. That's what they call it, aka also the nail cleaner. One of the reasons why I like this one compared to the other tools is that the length of the actual driver here is almost as long as some of the other multi-tools themselves. So if you're really in a tight spot, you can get a decent reach with it. Combine that with the other driver, which doubles as a dual-sided file. This one's not bad. I mean, you can kind of use it as like a little chisel, I suppose. Both of the file sides would be good for maybe making this nail look beautiful. Let's see. Not exactly my favorite texture. I kind of prefer the diamond texture that's found on the Victorinox file. Let me see here. Well, I'll just kind of keep that at camera. You tell me if it looks better or not. But yeah, as far as the NexTool goes, I just wish the selling point wasn't defective, or I'd suggest it. But I mean, for $30, that's creeping up on like Leatherman and also Victorinox like price territory, and the quality just quite isn't there in my opinion. Next up, we have the Leatherman Squirt. This one normally runs for about 40 bucks. But right now, for whatever reason, it's up to $60 or $70. What's cool about this one is that it's the smallest one, or second to smallest compared to like the Victorinox over here. But it also houses a full pair of pliers, needle nose pliers Frankly, I think this one's one of the best ones out of all these when it comes to the actual plier quality. Just the way that they're designed, the materials used, the way that they close, they just feel pretty substantial. They're pretty smooth too. On the outside, we have a couple of different tools. So this is pretty similar to the NexTool Mini Flagship as far as the design goes. But they also toss on like a little outside edge here too if you need like a little narrow filing as well. You also get this too, knurling on the edge. Now I think I've seen in other reviews that they've used it for like striking, and that little extra bit of texture helps for that. You have the knife. Frankly, I think this is probably the second best knife out of the box compared to like the Victorinox. It would probably be first place. The Gerber is awful, and so is the NexTool. But I mean that in actually not damning praise, but this is a quality little blade. I like it. Also, the opening and closing of tools is second only to, once again, the Victorinox. On the other side, you have two drivers. Or excuse me, you have a pair of scissors. These are okay, you know. They've gotten a little bit of use to them, and I think they're pretty sharp out of the box. They feel a little spongy, you know, when you just kind of press this, it doesn't really feel substantial. But I mean, that doesn't get in the way of the actual usage of the tool itself. Next up, we have the two driver bits that I kind of mentioned before. This is the flat head, also used as a chisel, also used as a bottle opener. So, I mean, you know, solid little three little uses in one. On the other side here, we kind of have the 2D Phillips, aka the nail cleaner, aka probably could have put something else or added something to this, I'm not sure. But hey, it works. Other than that, you do have your little key ring holder, which is nice. I've also showed off the pliers as well. So for 40 bucks, the quality is pretty solid. I would really only say that the downside is that when it comes to price, like right now, $60, $70, this thing is not $60, $70 worth of like quality, in my opinion, especially since you can get almost everything else on here cheaper. So yeah, I don't know. It's a solid one. I like the size of it. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It just seems a little overpriced for what it is. Next up, we have the Gerber dime. And in my opinion, for 16, 18 bucks, this is probably the easiest one to suggest. So that way you kind of know what you need and what you don't need in a multi-tool. What I mean by that is that this one kind of has probably the most functions and maybe the best layout out of all of these. Let me dive in. So first up, you have the pair of scissors. This is very similar to the Leatherman, but somehow feels even spongier. But they seem fairly sharp. They've seen effective whenever I've used them. So I mean, if that's not a big deal to you, it has been a big deal to me. On the other side, which is very similar to the Leatherman, you have two drivers. Now this one, the 2D Phillips, if you want to call it that, also serves as the file. I think this is probably the worst file out of all of the other tools, and you can probably see why. There's just too much going on here. You got the cap opener right here. You have like the top rounded curve of the actual body of the tool itself. You have the key ring holder and also the key ring as well. And this is without even your keys being attached to it. It's just too much going on. Like I would say out of all this, like the little mini driver fingernail cleaner is the only thing that you could really have access to. This is just barely gonna do anything. You know, even on the other side where there's not much going on, you just have the crappy texture, you know? It's a miss on that one, unfortunately. On the other side here, we have the other driver. This is also called the fingernail buster, since it's actually the main reason as to why this thumb looks so god-awful. No explanation as to why it looks so bad on this one. But with this guy, the driver is just, once again, it's pretty awful. No, the driver is actually pretty good, and also the ability to be like a chisel, once again, pretty solid as well. I like it. Functional, aside from, you know, breaking your fingertips. This has got to be one of the worst knives out of all of it. And yes, I know the blade looks awful. There's a little notch to it. I actually ran this through an electric sharpener to try to make it sharpen. Didn't go well. It made it ugly. You know, it did turn out sharper, but it put that humongous notch on the blade. I've since grown up to use the sharpening rod from Victorinox. Lastly, I think this is the main reason why you would want the Gerber. This package opener is burly. This thing will go through packages, clamshell stuff. You can use it as a little X-Acto knife almost on like copy paper if you really just need a sharp blade and be able to press into it. I love this thing. Sometimes on the Victorinox models, they call it like a cotton puller or like an orange opener or an orange peeler, which I guess you could use that, but this is just get in, get out, rip open a package and move on. Cap opener, which can also be used as like a pry bar. Kind of almost looks like a little bird's face. But even though it's all metal, you still get a little pair of tweezers in here, which once again isn't on the NexTool, isn't on the Leatherman, isn't on the Victorinox Alox, but it is on the Celador model. So I mean, you still get the quality, but you also get a little pair of tweezers on the metal body. It's not much to be said about the pliers. I mean, they seem fully functional. I don't think that they open or close as tightly as the Leatherman, but they're extremely springy. So if you're just kind of using this as like a fidget toy, I mean, that thing is just snapping open. Very snappy. Out of all the tools, this one is probably the most easy to snap the palm of your meat in, or the meat of your palm in, just because it'll close and then the last bit snaps. So it's pretty easy to get stuff pinched in there. I've gotten pinched twice while owning this thing so far. So yeah, that's the Gerber dime. Like I said, for 18 bucks, you can't really go wrong. There isn't anything that's useful that this one doesn't have. Now, next up, we have the Victorinox Minichamp. I have the red Celador version and also the Alox version. Alox version is going to run you about, I think, like 45, 50 bucks. This guy should be around $35, $40. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the price will be flipped between the two, but I think for good reasons. The red Celador one, you're going to get a little bit more utility out of, just because it does offer a pair of tweezers, which I think is important in a mini tool, especially if you're carrying it with you all the time. Might have a stray hair, or, you know, it's just something that you need to pick out. This is going to be way more useful than a big old pair of pliers. Also, it has a built-in pressurized pen. So I've heard some people say like, oh, when would you ever really need a pen? I mean, if you're in an office setting, all the time. You can't get enough pens. Someone steals your favorite pen. And with this guy, if you have your keys, you always have a decent pen with you. It's pressurized. You can write upside down. It's dinky, so you don't have to worry about it like spilling ink all over the place. And then I heard online, some guy runs like a little Swiss Army repair shop, and he says that he's never seen this little mechanism on the side. So if that guy's seeing that much foot traffic, that many different types of these models come through, and he's never seen it break, I would say it's pretty rugged. The tool set between the two is very similar. In fact, they're exactly the same aside from the scale tools. So I'm just going to stick to the Alox. Now on one side, we are going to have a pair of scissors. In my opinion, this is the best pair of scissors out of the entire lineup. Now, of course, when I get the different version of the mini Flagship, that might not be the case, but these are just springy. They open very nicely. They're sharp. There's no issues. I will say is that this little keychain though kind of gets in the way of some of these tools, and I worry sometimes that it would cause like a nick. But next up, and you might have saw this a little earlier when I busted out the pen, this is the cap lifter, wire stripper, and also an actual mini Phillips. Look at that, it's not 2D, it's actually, you get all the teeth ridges on this bad boy. So that right off the bat kind of sets it apart, drill or bit wise, driver wise, whatever the hell you want to call it, compared to the competition. We also have a main blade here, Victorinox Classic. This one is also sharp as hell once you get it right out of the box. So as far as fit and finish goes, this is my favorite one to just, you know, dink around with. Now on the other side, this is my favorite file. Not only is it a solid size, you get the little, you can call it a bit if you want to, or a driver, but this diamond pattern just works wonders as far as like nails go. Now I know some people, they're looking to file something a lot more serious than just, you know, their thumb. But for me, I would imagine for most people, that's probably all you're going to be using this thing for, really, you know, is kind of just personal grooming as far as a file goes, I'd say. Next up here, we have the little orange opener, cotton puller. This one isn't quite as rugged as the Gerber dimes, but it gets the job done on like plastic shells or plastic clam shells. We also have the spoon, the small chisel, the other driver, whatever you want to call it. I think this thing's kind of useful. Of course, past the whole joke about using it for narcotics, it's probably my least used one, but when I need to use it, it's kind of nice to have it. This one is fairly useless, I think. This is a tiny little ruler. It comes with inches and centimeters. It also has a decent little driver as well at the very tip, at the very end of the tip, which makes it a little bit more useful. Let's see here. Sorry. So we have our other blade here. This is the straight edge. Some people like to have it just because it's, you know, another blade to have. In case you need a super sharp one, that would be your breakout in case of emergencies. And then, you know, I might have gone through everything. So yeah, as far as all of these little tools go, I think my favorite one is probably the red Celador version of the Minichamp. I think just the classic design, ease of opening, the amount of tools, and the pretty diminutive size, along with the pen. Like, if you're just going to be going around town, you need something to throw on your keys, like this is almost overkill, but it seems like awesome overkill. If you wanted to stick with the Victorinox, maybe something cheaper or just less tools, I think the Manager's awesome. The Rambler switches the pen for toothpick, which I don't think is very useful, but I think the Manager or the Minichamp would be an awesome option. This is the one I keep on my keys. Second up, I'd probably suggest the Gerber dime. At $18, this is almost half the price of the NexTool Mini. It has more functions. It has more functions than the Leatherman, in that it has like the drag blade, it has the always exposed cap lifter, and it also has a built-in set of tweezers for almost a similar size. Now, if you just need a pair of pliers and you want just the best possible quality of that, I'd probably suggest the Squirt. Also, it's not going to bust up your fingernails as bad as the Gerber dime. And it's also smaller than the Gerber dime. Finally, we have the NexTool Mini Flagship. And it's hard to suggest or offer or really think that anybody should get this thing if this one has so many quality control issues. It's also the largest out of all of them. I think if you need burly tools, maybe this will be your guy. You need a bigger pair of scissors, this is going to be the one that you want. But yeah, I don't know. For $10 more, I can get the Leatherman here, and it's going to do just about everything that this one does. But you're going to get way more quality. You're going to get a 25-year warranty. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Yes, I know I didn't do any sort of tool demonstrations on this, but I mean, I don't know. You've seen a pair of scissors work. You've seen a screw, get turned to the left and turned to the right. So yeah, take it from me. Get the Minichamp. It's a good one. See ya.